LSU falls to Florida, losing their third consecutive game. How did it happen, and where do they go from here? We got a lot to talk about. It's Locked on LSU. Let's go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks for making us your first listen. We are free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe, smash the like button. And of course, the best way, one of the best ways to help us grow is to leave your comments below. LSU loses to Florida 27-16. The third consecutive loss for the first time under Brian Kelly, losing 3 consecutive games. The first time LSU has lost 3 consecutive games since the 2021 season under Ed Ogeron, when the Tigers lost consecutively to Ole Miss, Alabama, and Arkansas. So how did this game transpire, and where did the Tigers go from here? I will start with this, because I know there's a lot of people who are going to come to this show today and who are going to look at me and say, Scone, you've been a big proponent of Brian Kelly. You've defended Nussmeier. Last week talking about the playoff. What do you have to say? A lot. I have a lot to say. Let's just go in reverse order. As far as the playoff, number one, that was a very practical thing. We went through the scenarios. I didn't sit down hammering out the playoff scenarios thinking that was what I was going to find. And being a show host, I thought, let's just look at what it would take to get there. And what it took was a lot of things that felt very likely. So we talked about it. Apparently, the most difficult part of that entire scenario was LSU winning out, clearly, because now that's completely off the table. If you're someone who's going to come here today to trash Garrett Nussmeier, I don't have any tolerance for that. Garrett Nussmeier isn't perfect, but he's the least of LSU's problems right now. The turnovers against Texas A&M and Alabama absolutely were brutal and contributed to your loss. I'm not negating that in any way. But you're not even in the position you're in without Garrett Nussmeier. You have a defensive line that has a 270-pound tackle, and God bless Parashan, but he's playing out of position because he has to. You have 2 linebackers with any experience that you count on. Your safety play has been poor. You've been largely unable to run the football the entire year. And on Saturday night, Garrett Nussmeier was sacked 7 times, 6 of them in the second half. Let's say this another way. Through 8 games, you had given up 6 sacks. Through 9 games, you had given up 6 sacks. On Saturday, you gave up 6 sacks in the second half. Okay? If you're laying the entirety of the loss at Garrett Nussmeier's feet, that is poorly placed. If you're pointing at Brian Kelly, you should, because the head coach deserves the blame. And it's not one of those things where you put it on the head coach because that's just the scapegoat. This is a game, when you look at how it played out, and we're going to talk about this. When you look at how it played out, if you didn't watch a play of this game, and I covered it, you woke up Sunday morning, you're working a turnaround, whatever it was, you couldn't watch the game. You wake up on Sunday morning, and I just show you the box score, and you see LSU put up 400 yards of offense. They ran it, sack adjusted for 160 yards. LSU controlled time of possession 41 minutes and 43 seconds to 18-17. That's basically what Vanderbilt did to Alabama. That's what Kentucky did to Ole Miss. You look at Florida, 7 penalties, LSU just 3. You look at the box score and you go, LSU 13 of 24 on third down, better than 50%. Florida just 3 of 9. You go, okay, LSU won double digits. And I show you the final score, LSU losing 27-16, and you go, how? Well, it's coaching. Of course it is. Because every moment where you had an opportunity to make something happen in this game, instead, your lack of discipline, your lack of attention to detail cost you. Let's run through the game quickly if we could. I don't want to bog down in this, but because you all watched it, I'm assuming. But this absolutely points back to Brian Kelly. And I'm going to go to Brian Kelly big picture in a second. You get the ball to start the game. You end up going for it on a 4th and 1. Going forward on 4th and 1 around midfield is fine. Blowing a timeout because you weren't ready to go forward on 4th and 1 is a problem. And then coming out of the 4th and 1, you run the stretch play with Xavier Thomas, you get thrown for a loss. I know some of y'all are going to say, what are you doing running a stretch play? It's 4th and 1, running up the middle. Yeah. How much confidence do you have in LSU's ability to get a yard up the middle? If LSU had run the ball up the middle and gotten stuffed, you're the same people that be sitting here today going, why would you run it up the middle? You can't run the ball. You need to run to the edge. So I'll excuse the play call. What I can't excuse is the timeout, because the timeout shows you weren't ready for that moment, and that's coaching. You force a punt, you get the ball back, you get 1 first down, you get a face mask called on Josh Williams. You move from your own 16 all the way up to their 38. You stall out, you punt it. They get the ball. First play, boom, Devon Keys drops an interception. 4 plays later, Florida's in the end zone. Now, the reason Devon Keys was even on the field is because Braden Swinson and Sage Ryan were suspended for the first quarter of the football game. No reason was given as to why. Discipline, I'm sure. But Devon Keys wouldn't have been in the game. Sage Ryan would have been at safety, and Major Burns would have been at star. That would have been, Major Burns in that position, and Major Burns is much more suited to come up with that interception. That cost you. That cost you the opportunity to take over at their 30 in the first quarter with 9:12 to play in the first quarter. I mean, the game is 6 minutes old. Devon Keys drops the interception. 4 plays later, boom, they're in the end zone. You're down 7-0. So let's look back. I'm not just going to hand wave Swinson and Sage Ryan not being there. Those are 2 veteran leaders on your team. The week after you lose to Alabama, you have veteran leaders on your team suspended for the first quarter of the game. That speaks to culture, and that has me very concerned. Those are the guys you would expect would be lifting the team up after the Alabama loss, trying to rally everyone around. Instead, those 2 guys were suspended for the first quarter. That's culture. That's a problem. You're down 7-0. You put together a really good drive. You convert a 3rd and 6 to Mason Taylor. You convert a 3rd and 1 with Josh Williams. And ultimately, this drive would stall out. You convert a 3rd and 4 on an 8-yard draw to Caden Durham. This drive would stall out because on 2nd and 8, Will Campbell gets a false start. Again, you go the wrong direction because you can't get out of your own way. And a 51-yard field goal is no good. Your defense will come up big again. Get a punt. Your offense would put together a great drive. You convert a 3rd and 1. You convert a 3rd and 10. You convert a 3rd and 9. And the next 3rd and 9 was a 28-yard touchdown pass to Aaron Anderson. You are controlling this game. You're moving the football. You're controlling the clock. DJ Lagway can't run it. You're playing well. Now Ryan and Swinson are back out there. You're tied and you're feeling good. They kick a field goal. It's 10-7. And you put together another long drive. You get the ball with 3:20 before half. Hey, go kick a field goal. Tie it. Score a touchdown. Take the lead. And you move right down the field. But with 47 seconds left, 1st and 10, you have a bad snap from their 25. Bad snap, sack on 3rd and 18, incomplete pass. You kick a 50-yard field goal. Again, time and again, you had the opportunity to take advantage. You didn't. They get the ball to start the second half. You quickly force a punt. You put together another great drive. You convert a 3rd and 12 with a 16-yard draw. You convert a 3rd and 8 from a 13-yard pass to Aaron Anderson. You're moving down the field. 14-yard run by Caden Durham. You went deep to Chris Hilton, which was incomplete, unfortunately. A 22-yard run by Josh Williams. You're at their 14-yard line. 1st and 10 at their 14. Josh Williams, -1. Caden Durham, 2 yards. CJ Daniels, touchdown, negated because of Kyron Lacey OPI. Instead of being up 17-10, you move backwards, have to kick a field goal. It's 13-10. That was the story of the game. They'd go down and kick a 55-yard field goal to tie it. The next possession is when you fumbled. Emory Jones picked it up, and then he fumbled. You got a big stop. Your defense came up with a stop. And you get the ball back, and you go 3 and out with a sack. They muff the punt. You can't recover it. They get the ball with 14:52 to go in the ball game. You're tied at 13. 3 plays. They score a touchdown. 20-13, they're up. You got to put together an answer. You drive all the way down the field. Again, you convert a 4th and 3 with CJ Daniels for 7 yards, a 4th and 4, Mason Taylor for 15 yards, and then on first down from their 21, Emory Jones false start. You end up settling for a 38-yard field goal. And then they ripped off the 55-yard run to go up 27-16. That would be your final. Time and again, your self-inflicted wounds cost you the opportunity to win this game. That is coaching. There's no way around it. And if today you're wondering about Brian Kelly and asking questions, you're right to. And I know a lot of you have been, and I don't think that's just because there's good and you have to take the good with the bad, which I want to talk about. You lost this game, but the response of this game is going to tell us everything we need to know. And I'm going to get to that as we continue here, Locked on LSU, your team every day. My goodness, we probably needed a lot of 5-hour energy to get through that. Our friends over at 5-Hour Energy know being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby. It's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or an agonizing second overtime, or an agonizing defeat, which is why they created the Stand the Fan 5-Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel. The energy shot made just for super fans like us, the fans who are first in the parking lot and the last to leave. You know what else? You want to make it through this tailgate coming up on Saturday with Vanderbilt coming in? You'll need some of that 5-Hour Energy. 5-Hour Energy knows no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for a big tailgate, ironing your jersey, because I'm sure a lot of you do that. Your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited Stand the Fan 5-Hour Energy Shot is here to keep you fueled throughout the season. So what's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with a 5-Hour Energy, available at 5hourenergy.com and shipped nationwide. Today's show is also brought to you by Game Time. If you want to be in that number Saturday for LSU and Vanderbilt, and they may need you, you can get your tickets over at Game Time. Download that Game Time app. You can filter only incredible deals on great seats with Game Time picks. You can see the view from your seat on your phone before you buy. I love the all-in pricing feature, which I tell you about all the time. You got to turn that feature on when you toggle. It'll show you the full price, so there's no surprises at checkout. You can buy tickets in seconds with 2 taps. Game Time picks shows you only the best value on tickets. They got last minute deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. So make sure you check out Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem with the code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. So I know a lot of people today are going to be questioning the future of the program with Brian Kelly. And I would say that you are right to do that. Now, I think there are some objective truths that if we're being honest with ourselves, no matter where you fall, how upset you are about this game, you can agree to this. There has been good and there has been bad. If you're going to focus on the bad, okay. But you also have to acknowledge the good so as to consider the entire body of work. This is the first time LSU has lost 3 consecutive games since 2021. That was the year when Ed Ogeron got fired. They lost to Ole Miss and an embarrassing game in Oxford where LSU quit. After that Ole Miss game, they lost to Alabama. And then they lost to Arkansas. That Arkansas game was a home game against a bad Arkansas team where LSU lost in Baton Rouge in overtime. And in a game where Garrett Nussmeier didn't start. Max Johnson started. Nussmeier went in the second series, played the rest of the game, and LSU lost in overtime. The last 10 quarters of football, the third and fourth quarter against A&M, and then the Alabama and Florida games, have been the worst 10 quarters under Brian Kelly. Now, we could look at isolated moments, but consecutively, they haven't played this badly for this stretch in their entire time under Brian Kelly. And the fact that it's year 3 should be concerning. The biggest question I have is, what has happened in the last 10 quarters. Because before that, if you can bring yourself to this point, remember, very disappointing loss to USC, but you won 6 straight. You were ranked in the top 10. Your defense had improved. Garrett Nussmeier was leading the SEC, or right there with Jackson Dart in everything from yards and completions and average yard per game and passing touchdowns and everything. You beat Ole Miss, which that win keeps looking better and better. You won at South Carolina. That win keeps looking better and better. You suffocated Arkansas. You were up double digits midway through the third quarter against Texas A&M on the road in a battle of the only unbeatens in conference. And you knocked Connor Wegman out of the game. And from that moment, when Garrett Nussmeier threw that interception across his body to the middle of the field, Marcel Reed came into the game. This has been a different LSU team. How is it unraveled so mightily? I don't know. I don't have the answer. If you were coming here for that answer, I don't have it. But whatever the answer is to that question is going to determine if Brian Kelly ends up being successful at LSU. Because whatever changed from that moment, when LSU was a top 10 team in the country, they were winning double digits on the road at Texas A&M in a battle of the only unbeaten teams in the conference. From that moment to what they are now is such a stark contrast that it's almost inexplicable. Brian Kelly has to figure out what has happened there. Some of it I can understand. Your personnel isn't great against running quarterbacks. Okay. You didn't face a running quarterback on Saturday against Florida. You faced DJ Lagway, who couldn't move. And you own time of possession 41 minutes to 19. It's inexplicable how it could happen that way. And as bad as the last 10 quarters have been, we also have to recognize and acknowledge the previous 6 games, the improvement were good. The giant concern is the first 2 years under Brian Kelly, they improved as the season went along. That's inarguable. From their opening season losses to Florida State to how they finished the season, they got better. And he deserves credit for that. It looked like that was happening again until now. So as I look at it, here's my biggest question. You have 2 games to go. What happens to this team over the next 2 games? Do you focus, get back on track, and win 2 home games? Or do you let this thing spiral and finish 6-6? I don't know the answer to that question, but that's going to tell me an awful lot about the buy-in, the culture, the climate around this team. Now, you can say that, well, they lost games late and things weren't on the table anymore for LSU the last 2 years. That's not true. In 2022, Kelly's first year, they beat Bama. They had won the West. And they still had an opportunity to go to Atlanta and win the SEC championship. They didn't. But even last year, after you lost to Bama, you came back the next week against Florida. And though your big picture goals were off the table with your third loss, Jaden went superhuman, as we all saw. And from that point, you were playing for Jaden Daniels' Heisman. That's what we were all locked in on for those final 2 games. You're not playing for a playoff. You're not playing for a Heisman. You're not playing for anything of consequence the next 2 weeks. So who shows up and plays hard, and can you beat Vanderbilt and Oklahoma on your home field? That is going to be very telling for LSU over the next 2 weeks. Brian Kelly deserves credit for winning the West in his first year and beating Alabama. He deserves credit for the team improving a year ago. Jaden Daniels winning the Heisman. He recruited Jaden Daniels. He gets credit for that. He gets credit for the improvement this team had made up until this point. But he also gets all of the blame for what has happened the last 3 weeks. Y'all, it has been a long time since LSU won a football game. The last time LSU won a game was against Arkansas. They lost to A&M. They had a bye. They lost to Bama. They lost to Florida. It's been a month. It's been a month since you won a football game. Around these parts, that's uncomfortable. So I know everybody right now is going to say, fire Brian Kelly. I'm going to tell you again, that ain't happening. You'd owe him over $60 million with that buyout. Now, you could say if the buyout wasn't an issue, would you consider it? And I would still say no, because there is a large enough sample of good during his 2+ seasons here to justify giving him more rope. But it is also fair to say if the buyout weren't an issue, we would be looking at this going, okay, the equity you built winning the West year one, beating Bama, Jaden's Heisman, all that stuff, hiring a really good staff, the recruiting class you have, that equity has bought you some rope. But you got to finish strong. And next year, you better be competing next year. Because if you're not in a 12-team playoff next year, then you look around and start to wonder, did you get the right guy? And then it starts to be a very fair question. Now, we'll point this out. And I know how some of you are going to react to this because a lot of people are upset right now, and you should be upset. Ed Orgeron won a national championship in year 3. You know that. Les Miles, despite the fact that they lost 2 games that year, won a national championship in year 3. You know that. Nick Saban, it happened for him in year 4. Do you remember what happened in Nick Saban's 3rd year in Baton Rouge? Inherited a terrible situation. Year 1, they go to the Peach Bowl. Year 2, they lost 3 games, but the breaks fell their way. They went to Atlanta and they won the SEC. Year 3, they lost 5 games. Lost 5 games in year 3. They went 8-5. They were 8-4 and lost the bowl game to Texas to finish 8-5. Year 3 under Nick Saban, they went 8-5. And a year later, they won the national championship. I'm not predicting tonight, as I record this episode hours after LSU lost to Florida, that LSU is going to win a national championship next year. What I am saying is, I have an example of a coach that had a bad situation, had early success, they stumbled in year 3, and had an inflection point in year 4. Maybe that's what it'll take for Brian Kelly. And maybe it takes having a 5th-year senior quarterback in Garrett Nussmeier. I know some of y'all wanted to leave, but y'all are the same goofballs who were complaining about Jaden Daniels his first 2 years in Baton Rouge. And a lot of y'all, after Jaden Daniels and LSU lost to Florida State in 2023 in that opener down in Orlando, y'all wanted Daniels benched. Y'all know who you are, and you're the same ones complaining about Nussmeier right now. I'm going to tell you the same. I will dig in my heels on this. I'll tell you the same thing. Garrett Nussmeier still a first-year starting quarterback. Let him continue to grow and experience. I would rather a 5th-year guy with starting experience than go to the portal or start a freshman or start over. No, you want Garrett Nussmeier back, and you want him to keep getting better. We saw it with Daniels. We saw it with Burrow. We saw it with Mettenberger. You'll see it with Nussmeier as well. He's still going to throw for over 3,000 yards, nearly 30 touchdowns this year, and with barely a running game to speak of for the bulk of the season. So, you signed a great recruiting class in 24. You're about to ink maybe the best signing, arguably the best signing class ever. And the 2026 crop in Louisiana is a bumper crop. That's one of those ones that pops up every 8-10 years in this state. And you get those guys to stay home. Now, all of a sudden, your roster looks like it's supposed to look like. So there's reason to believe it can turn around. But if your faith is shaken today, it should be. Because Brian Kelly, among everybody, has an awful lot to prove over these next 2 weeks. If year 3 is when your culture is rooted and you have buy-in and your guys and all that stuff, you shouldn't go on the road against a 4-win Florida team. Control the time of possession 41 minutes and 43 seconds to 18-17. Convert better than 50% of your third downs. Rush for over 160 yards against sack adjusted. And lose that game by double digits. That's not winning football. And that's on coaching because you didn't have your guys ready in those moments. And Brian Kelly's got to fix that over these next 2 weeks. It'll be very telling about the state of this team and the direction of this program, what happens with Vanderbilt and Oklahoma coming in. There was a bit of unfortunate news for LSU, and that's that Devin Harper decommitted and flipped to Ole Miss. So Devin Harper is a big-time offensive lineman who had been committed to LSU. He's a 4-star. They've been committed to LSU. He flips to Ole Miss. He's from Calvary Baptist up in Shreveport. So that's a Louisiana kid who's now flipped to Ole Miss. In the on-3 composite, he's the 7th best interior offensive lineman, the 3rd best player in Louisiana, a top 100 player overall, number 90 overall in the composite. So to lose a guy like that from this class to not even a division, but a conference rival now, especially when you look at the offensive line, where you're going to lose 3 or 4 starters off this team. There's some talk about Emory Jones coming back. And if that happens and Emory Jones plays offensive guard, and that's a huge boost. But you never want to lose a guy in your state, especially a top 100 player like Harper, and especially to a conference opponent, a conference foe like Ole Miss. So that's another blemish here on a day where not a lot of good feeling going around LSU football. Tigers lose 27-16. 2 games to go. Vanderbilt and Oklahoma. Find out what the bowl destination is after that. But everything else for LSU to play for is off the table. Now you find out what you're really made of as a team and as a program. Be very telling over these next coming weeks. We'll be right here with you. Okay, that'll do it for us here. Do me a favor. Please smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, Facebook, like the page, share the post. We're not on Facebook. My apologies. YouTube, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. If you're watching or if you're listening on podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app and let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you here every single day for Locked on LSU, your team every day.